hello there.
Hello there. It's like I haven't seen you in
I know.
hours.
Just a few hours.
All right. It's Wednesday. It's Politically Motivated. I'm Christopher Heath.
I'm Lauren Melendez.
We have got a cornucopia of stuff to talk about. And I was putting together, I was putting together kind of a thought for what we were going to talk about today. And you're like, we do need to talk about the Super Bowl.
We have to.
I'm like, it was a boring game. And you're like, no. I'm not talking about the game.
Right. We're going to take it a step further. Or some like to call it the Bad Bunny concert mixed with the football game.
Right.
So, big deal.
I watched the game. I watched the halftime.
You and 135 million people. It was the highest rated Super Bowl viewership of any show, which is incredible. It beat out Kendrick Lamar last year. So for folks who were not happy, we already saw leading up to this, there was a lot of pushback. It was un-American, which made me very disappointed in our country, considering Puerto Rico is part of America.
Yeah, tell that to the Puerto Ricans living in the Central Florida region, many of whom moved here after Hurricane Maria. And I say moved here because moved here is the correct term.
Right, moved here. They did not immigrate here.
You moved here from Boston. You didn't immigrate to. No. Same thing with Puerto Ricans. Right. You know what? Not a Bad Bunny fan, but again, my music taste got locked in place somewhere in the late 90s. So that's kind of, where I'm at. And I mean, for my liking, just give me Metallica for 25 minutes at halftime. I've been good to go. But they weren't catering to me, the NFL. The NFL knows what it's doing.
Right.
They're not picking Bad Bunny simply out of a hat. They're looking out at and saying he's the biggest artist right now in the world. He appeals to a younger generation that the NFL desperately wants to appeal to. He appeals to a Hispanic audience that the NFL is trying to appeal to. And
a population that is growing rapidly in the entire country.
Yes. And so all of those things line up for, we want to have, would it have made certain people happier to have had Paul McCartney come out? By the way, not American.
Which is interesting.
Maybe, but it was a good show. And then the
comments on social media, I think, those were disappointing. It was very clear that people were not happy that there was a singer who was not speaking English. He did not translate any of his music. He didn't do anything special. He was very authentic to his artistry. But I saw a lot of comments folks were saying, look, on the anniversary of, 250th anniversary of the country's existence, we should be having the most American performance ever. And to say that Bad Bunny is not American, I think is just a slap in the face.
Yeah, we could always make Puerto Rico a 51st state.
That would, maybe that'll justify it.
A couple of months ago, we wanted to make Greenland the 51st state. I believe that was Central Florida Representative Randy Fine filed that bill. So anyway, I thought the show was interesting. I liked the showmanship of it. Do not know a single Bad Bunny song, but
there was a lot of symbolism, and we're not going to spend the whole time talking about Bad Bunny, but he made sure that he used that platform. He knew going in, folks were not happy to see him. He knew he was going to have some haters, and so one of the biggest things I thought was that he walked with the football down the turf, and there was a huge banner that said, the only thing stronger than hate is love. And he named all of the American countries, South America. He was very particular about how he...
A couple got married during the performance. And for anyone saying, well, he didn't speak English, the counter-programming that was on TPUSA, Turning Point USA, explain to me which part of English is ba with da ba to bang to bang.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I've got some Kid Rock on my playlist.
But it just, the fact that we saw that the president of the United States, who said that he was, he came out later and said he was disgusted by Bad Bunny's concert and he couldn't believe it. But we saw he watched the entire thing.
Yeah. And as somebody who has covered more than 36 Trump rallies going all the way back to 2015 down in Sarasota, he selects his own playlist for his rallies. And I will tell you, there's some Pavarotti on there. There's some Bocelli on there. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
It's a melting pot. It's not all
of his
not
songs
just American artists.
Not all of his songs are in English, and not all of his songs are. He's got a lot of Rolling Stones on there and Elton John. I remember I was at one rally and they were playing Elton John. I think it was Tiny Dancer, and somebody went up to a staffer and was like, turn this off. And they're like, Mr. Trump personally selects this
music.
This
is what he asked for.
So, hypocrisy is the price that vice pays to virtue. All right, if that wasn't fun enough to get things
that leads us into immigration. That was another thing people were concerned about. Was there going to be ICE enforcement at the Super Bowl? There was not, but that was obviously a big concern. And so While they were not at the Super Bowl, they're everywhere else.
They are. And we've seen this, boiling over both here in Central Florida and, of course, nationally as well. And I want to highlight some of the reporting that Mike Valenti here at News 6 has done, because he has been at federal court the last several days. And what we are seeing is one by one, a lot of these people who have been detained by ICE are going before judges for what is known as a habeas corpus hearing. And most of them are getting released on this. And one of the things Mike pointed out in his reporting is that what immigration is doing in Central Florida is they'll detain somebody, they'll run out for doing something, and then when the clock is run out after 48 hours, they basically pull them out of the jail, drive them around a little bit, and then rebook them to try and start the clock again. And you've seen judges come up and say, I'll read some of what Mike has reported here on it. One judge compared this to a third world country, said that's just not what's happening. One of the other ones, in Mike says, the judge says to the attorney for the government, the AUSA, you're a lawyer for the government. You should know what the law is. I mean, this is, the judge went on to say, we don't just round people up and then detain them in perpetuity.
Right.
And so you're seeing judges here in the Central District of Florida, but you're also seeing judges in other federal districts step in and say, you can't just hold people indefinitely.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it happen. Georgia, there are judges who are coming out and saying, look, our district courts are being flooded with cases. They don't have the manpower to hold these people. But then, taking the politics aside, they're just saying, what is the reason? Do they pose a flight risk? The government has to be able to justify when they arrest someone that there is a reason that they are being detained. And so if you have 300 people who are being detained for, being here in the country unlawfully, but they don't have any violent criminal history, or they don't, again, pose a flight risk, well, then the courts have to have a bond hearing. They have to let them go, and those aren't being scheduled either.
No, and what you're really running into is you're running into two different tracks of law here.
Right.
Immigration courts are what we would call Article 2 courts. They are under the executive branch. They exist there. They are designed to handle these types of things, but they're not processing them. And when they're not, then your only other remedy is to go to an Article 3 court, which is what we're having in the Central District. And that's where these Article 3 courts step in and say, listen, you've got to follow the rules. Any law worth its name it imposes certain restrictions, not just on the people that are under the law, but the people enforcing the law. So when we deal with these immigration cases, you've got to remember, simply an immigration violation, that's a civil issue, not a criminal issue. So it has to be handled in such a way. But again, all of these things have to be followed. And one by one, we're seeing the federal court system step in and say, you can do these things. You're well within your rights to do them.
Justify it.
But you've got to follow the letter of the law. And once again, Mike Valenti, some great reporting here out of the Central District, where we've seen at least a half a dozen people go before the judge and argue there's no reason to be held. Right. And the judge is sitting back and saying, yeah, cut him loose.
Yeah. Want to shout out him, too. He was the only reporter there in court on Tuesday when we had these two cases where these people who were being held on ICE detainers presented, habeas cases, and the judge had to say, we got to let you go. So.
And you've got to cut through a lot. I mean, immigration law is a very, very dense area of the law, because you've got to separate out, okay, is somebody here illegally, or are they here on
did they overstay a visa?
Right. Overstaying a visa is different than entering the country illegally. It's also different than if you are here and you are seeking asylum. There's a difference between being a refugee and being an immigrant. An immigrant is somebody who comes in and immigrates into the country either illegally or legally. A refugee is somebody who is saying, I cannot, for my own safety, return to my home country. I am seeking, and a lot of when we get into the issue of what is a refugee and somebody seeking asylum, a lot of that's governed by international law and treaties we have with other countries.
Right.
And so because of that, you simply can't just round up people and get rid of them.
We saw it recently with TPS and Haitians and the threat of that, being revoked, and we're just going to ship, thousands of Haitians back to Haiti. But there, like you said, there is a partnership between governments. There's understanding. There's laws. There's agreements. And we can't just we as a country cannot just arbitrarily say, okay, you were not born in America, so therefore we're just going to take you and ship you back to wherever you were born.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where, again, the law is very clear in how things have to be done. You can go through all of these steps and remove people from the country. We have volumes of federal law that explain exactly how the process needs to be followed. But you got to follow the process.
Right.
You can't skip a couple steps here and there, because when you do that, you've created your own set of issues going forward. And so again, one by one, we're seeing judges in all sorts of federal districts across the country step in and say, you're not following the process, including right here in Central Florida. And
it's straining their resources. They cannot handle it. I mean, you sent some notes, Georgia, we just talked about that. Minnesota, we obviously know Operation Metro Surge, which started at the end of last year. That was already, stressful enough that the state was not happy. They did not want them there. But then I don't know that our government, specifically Department of Homeland Security, ICE, thought about the manpower it takes or just the physical resources to do this. After you round these people up, after you detain them, where do they go? Who's transporting them? How are we handling their cases? And, the federal government, or I should say, the president's administration, they are not playing well in the sandbox.
No, and the other thing that is starting to be concerning as you see these cases move their way across other parts of the country is you're seeing assistant United States attorneys, AUSAs,
right.
A lot of them resign and or leave, and these are coveted jobs. Mm-hmm. These are the kind of jobs that when you're in law school, you are working. If you want to go into this is a goal for you, right. And we're seeing them, people leave that, and that's fairly unheard of. So you're having a bit of a talent drain coming out of the AUSA ranks, and you can't just snap your fingers and replace them with somebody fresh out of law school. It's going to take time to get that next crop of AUSAs in there. And you've seen in some cases that the feds are looking at maybe going and tapping JAG officers to come in. Well, JAG officers, that's not their background. Now they can obviously, if they're attorneys, they know they can get read up quickly, but it's creating a downstream effect on the justice system, on the application of law. And again, when you start moving way too fast and, just kind of, we'll deal with the consequences later, the consequences sometimes hit.
One thing we've been really good about doing as a station, Mike has been taking sort of the charge on this, Mike Valenti, is sort of getting the numbers of all of the detainees who are in Orange County Jail. And, every day, or at least for a period of 2 weeks, the number was like incredible. It was 300, 400 people, and it's a majority of them were people who were there on an immigration hold, had no other criminal charges. And so we've seen that sort of drop down as we've covered this. We put more pressure. So it'll be interesting to see what that number looks like over the next few weeks. I know Mike has sort of been like checking in, literally calling them every day. How many? But now that we know, obviously, the mayor is frustrated with this. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of law and order associated with this whole process. So it should be interesting to see what comes of that.
All right. This seems like a good place to take a pause. Why don't we do that? We'll be right back to discuss, more controversy.
Black History
Month controversy. And then somebody demanding transparency who doesn't want to
be transparent.
Have transparency. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back to Politically Motivated. Lauren Melendez alongside Christopher Heath. We are talking all things Black history now for the next few minutes. And it's been celebrated historically in the country now 50 years, which it seems like a milestone, but it's kind of disappointing. FAMU, Florida A&M University, historically Black university here. They're in the spotlight for not a great reason. Some Black law students brought it to our attention. They actually reached out to our station and they said, hey, we're creating posters. We're talking about celebrating Black history. We can't use the word Black.
Yeah.
And we just sort of scratched our heads.
It's one of those tips that comes in and you're like, there's no way.
Right.
There's no way this is true. An HBCU, the B in HBCU stands for Black, saying you can't use the word Black during Black History Month. Again,
a little odd.
There's no way this can be true. So
we did some digging. We reached out to university, and they essentially said, look, this happened, but it wasn't the intention of the university to try to censure or tell these students that they could not celebrate their heritage. They said that they essentially were trying to follow the law, follow the new guidelines that have been presented ever since there's been sort of this crackdown on DEI all across the country.
This is what Tylisa Hampton Forrest did some digging into this, and she initially had the story and had the follow-up when the university clarified, and they're like, okay, it was a staff level error. But to your point, it's Senate Bill 266. This was passed in 2023, and it was one of these things that I remember covering it, and there were so many people raising their hand and saying, this is vague. This is setting out, and the bill basically said you can't use state or federal funds for anything for DEI. Okay, well, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a lot of things.
Right.
And so now you have universities, FAMU being an example, latest example, they're like, we're trying to comply. we don't know what it means to comply. So rather than risk running afoul of this very vague law, what we're going to do is we're just going to restrict everything to try and stay on the good side of this. It was not a best moment.
And to play devil's advocate, there is a level of like you feel for these universities. We saw it happen at Harvard. We saw, President Trump come down really hard when a university did not comply with his orders to either repeal or pull back diversity, equity, and inclusion. So like you mentioned, these universities who rely on federal funding, a lot of them who rely on the diversity of international students, they don't want to have somebody say you did something wrong and now you're not going to get what you need. And so like you said, they're doing their best to try to follow the guidelines, but without a lot of specificity, they're sort of less scrambling.
And if you want to talk about a university or college within a university that has a reason to be gun shy, FAMU's law school basically got eliminated by the state of Florida. They went over and took all of the law books and basically took them across the street to Florida State University and gave them to them and dissolved FAMU's law school. It wasn't until years later FAMU stood up the law school again. Yeah. But this is a university that has fought hard to try and get its place and is clearly in a position now where they're trying to comply with the law, but at the same time remembering, the state is watching.
Right.
The state, through the Board of Governors, through the executive branch, are watching. And there, but for the grace of God, goes New College of Florida, which the state rolled in, redid the entire university, and FAMU's looking at it and saying, if we want to continue to exist in this space, how do we do so without upsetting the people who are watching in Tallahassee?
It's just such a tricky, slippery slope, and it's just the irony that an HBCU, historically black college or university, finds themselves in the position where they have to tell certain students or tell black students that they have to dictate how they celebrate their blackness. It's very unique. This was sort of a happy ending. The student reached back out and said that she was really happy. One of the law students who had actually approached Tylisa, said, look, we're thankful that you guys shed some light on this. Things seem like they're back to normal. It was a misunderstanding, but this is like a microcosm of a bigger issue.
Yes. And then the other one is, so the Tampa Bay Lightning.
New jerseys.
So Tampa Bay Lightning rolled out some jerseys to honor Black History Month.
Right.
And as teams do often, and then not just in hockey, but in other sports, they'll roll out jerseys to celebrate different things.
Any special occasion.
The NFL for breast cancer awareness goes full pink. And anyway, so this one you could title under "Never Read the Comments" section because Tampa Bay rolls out the jerseys. They are celebrating Black History Month, and let's just say the comment section is
brutal.
It's grotesque. It really is. And people everybody on the internet is 6'5" and bench press is 450.
Yeah.
You are very tough on
As we like to say, Twitter fingers, right? Like you have this veil of anonymity and you feel like you can say anything and do anything and attack anybody. The comments were despicable. I mean, they were they were outrageous.
I warned you. I sent you this.
I
said, I'm sending you this story. If you want to read the comments, go for it. I warned you not to.
And I went on like a deep dive. So if you're not familiar, as Chris mentioned, the jerseys celebrate Black history. Shortest month of the year. We got 28 measly days. The design is black, green, and yellow, which are Black history colors, and they actually do pay homage to, I should say, the Renaissance. Really, I mean, this is when those colors sort of took hold and became synonymous with black, all things black, excellence, Black greatness. And so when the university unveiled this, people were online saying, "Hey, I want to." There was one comment that I think someone said, "Let's celebrate. I'll bring a rope."
Yeah.
Sort of highlighting or making a reference to hanging Black people, which
lynching people.
Yeah, lynching people.
And I mean, it is, and we're sitting here not too far from Groveland, where, if you've ever read Devil in the Grove, go read that about what happened there. But so, but now, to be fair, not all of the comments.
No, it was divided.
The vast majority were cool with it or, praise the jerseys. And, again, it's the internet is a cesspool of humanity.
I think it reminded me of, I remember I was having conversations after, Barack Obama was first elected and everyone was like so excited. First Black president. If for no other reason, it was a first in America, right? Mm-hmm. It was an opportunity for Black people to feel seen, to see a version of themselves in a position of power. And then the country elected President Donald Trump. And no matter what aisle you are on politically, it just showed you, again, 4 years later, how much of a shift and how much of a divide there was in our country, that we wanted one type of person, we wanted another type of person so close to each other. So these comments reminded me that there are always going to be people who are going to stand on the right side of history in terms of just embracing change. You don't have to like a design, but you don't have to say things that are racist about him.
Yeah, well, I think people feel a level of, again, it's the anonymity of the internet. You don't have to be yourself. Like, there are things you wouldn't say to a person, to their face,
right?
Or you wouldn't say if it was your face being recorded. But if you can hide behind an avatar and hide behind a screen name and nobody ever knows who you are, you feel emboldened to be the worst version of yourself you could possibly be. And, I've been on the receiving end in my career of a lot of negative things sent to me, either through Twitter or Facebook. And, it's like anything else. It's always anonymity. It's always, you're always so much tougher behind that keyboard. And
it's anonymity, but I've got to beg the question, do some people feel emboldened to say things that are racist or to do things that are racist after seeing things like our president not denounce Barack and Michelle Obama being depicted as monkeys on Truth Social, right? So there is a level of,
does it create a permission structure?
Exactly. Is it okay? So
the continuing,
it's a slippery slope.
It is. All right. Let's get back to the good old state of Florida here.
Okay.
Our CFO, Blaise Ingoglia, he's been traveling around the great state of Florida.
Right.
He's been demanding records from counties, from cities, and doing his doging, as he puts it.
His job is to be a financial watchdog, which he does very well.
Among other jobs he has. And so anyway, we have requested here at News 6 travel records from his office. We've requested information about where he's going, how much money is being spent, and lo and behold, when we requested information from the CFO's office, they were like,
They didn't say anything. Yeah.
This was Mike DeForest is still going through some of these records, preparing the report as we speak. But again, this is the point of, if you're going to travel the country, or travel the state, I should say, and beat the drum of financial accountability, and I want all the records you have, maybe you shouldn't be surprised when somebody knocks on your door and says, according to Florida sunshine laws, you need to turn over your records.
There is a quote he said, for the people listening to me right now, watch your local governments. This is at a press conference in Orlando during one of his many stops, and he stands for do the right thing, be transparent, show us your books, if you will. And so after several requests, might I add, that people have to pay for. So when you make a public records request and you want X amount of documents, that takes that's a salary, right? Somebody's got to do that job. You got to pay them hourly or yearly or whatever. And so when people pay, when news organizations or independent journalists, whomever, pay for records requests, there is a legally binding agreement that says we will either turn it over to you in a certain amount of time, or we will tell you that we will not give them to you, and they need to provide a reason.
Yeah.
So imagine our surprise as a news station when Mike DeForest is digging through these records and finds not only did they not turn them over, they said nothing. They either ignored completely or just didn't acknowledge it.
So Florida's sunshine laws are very, very robust, and they spell out all of this. They spell out exactly, you've got to acknowledge, you've got to comply. You can charge if it's going to take time, but you've got to charge. You can't charge, exorbitant amounts of fees. You charge the rate of the, lowest paid person who can do the job.
Right.
So if it's any attorney on your staff can do it, then great. You can't just have the general counsel or the senior counsel do it. So all of this is spelled out by statute. The problem is compliance. A lot of it's voluntary compliance. A lot of it is these agencies, and it's not just, and we're picking on the CFO here, but I will tell you, this has been a issue. Listen, I'm going to go back to the federal level. If stepping outside of Florida, one of the worst for this was the Obama administration. When we would FOIA stuff from the feds, we consistently had to wait and sometimes, sue to get information. And if there's ever been anything that's bipartisan out there, it is not wanting to turn over records, because after Obama left office, the Trump administration was just as bad. The Biden administration was just as bad. And the current Trump administration is picking up where...
they didn't set a good precedent.
So this is a bipartisan issue. But at the state level, Florida has, specifically in our sunshine laws, rules in there for disclosure, for letting the public know what government is doing. And time after time after time, we have found these agencies either just ignore the rules or basically sit back and say, sue us.
Right.
Come on and sue us because we know it'll cost you money. And on our end, we're paying for this with taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for us. Either you go away or you waste your money. Either way, we don't care.
It's defeating, especially for people like us trying to do our jobs. I mean, let's talk about this example. August 7th, Florida Politics filed a public records request. They wanted the travel expenses for the CFO's office, something that I think most journalists have done. You know, we want to know what the mayor is up to. How much money did it take to send you to the city or to do this on behalf of the city? So they took 5 months to release 20 pages of records. By the way, Florida Politics paid $216 for this, right? So just to give you some context in terms of a potential price tag for what it costs for records. It's not exorbitant, but it's not cheap either, right?
It's not, no,
$216.
But like I asked for emails from the city of Orlando, and they sent me a letter, and they emailed me, and they're like, hey, it's going to cost you $20.
Right.
$20 basically means we're going to have somebody take their time to go through the servers, find these emails, compile them. It's going to take them a little bit of time to do that. Let's say we pay that person $20 an hour, it's going to take them an hour, then you have to cover that.
Compensate
and that's
that.
fine. Like, we don't want the government to be out money to go do this. But at the same time, they are supposed to reply.
Right.
They're supposed to reply in a timely fashion. And they're not supposed to, create artificial barriers to records being released. But again, so what? If you don't want to comply, great, sue us.
Yeah.
Sue us. And that is to the detriment of everyone involved.
I'm really curious to know if he's going to change his behavior because, after this airs and the fact that obviously Mike DeForest has been looking into this. I mean, that specific case, that August 7th case, had some closure to it. The records were released. I think he and his staff, they went on a trip. They spent $1,000. It was a 3-day trip to Orlando. This was back in August. So, again, we got some numbers, but itemized, right? Like, what does a staffer with the CFO's office spend $1,000 on in a 3-day trip? Is it transportation? Is it gas? Is it dinner? We as taxpayers have a right to know. And I think that is where the lines get blurred because yes, you gave us the information, but if it took all this to get it, what message are you sending about accountability and about when you can sort of cherry pick who follows the law and how they follow it?
Exactly. And this gets back to the core point of it is incumbent upon journalists, us, and the public to demand these from our elected leaders. We can't just sit back and say, well, if they don't want to turn it over, they don't have to turn it over. No, we should demand it. And I bring up the Obama example because it sometimes surprises people that they're like, oh, it's just Republican. No. All politicians, if there's one thing all politicians can agree on, is they don't want the public, the media, going through their emails, following up and holding them to account. And so this is where I think it's, again, you and I, as well as everyone out there, needs to put down their, partisan, fighting and just say, in the spirit of good governance, we need transparency.
That's the best way to put it. Yeah, that's all it is. It's not about Republican or Democrat or black or white. It's the spirit of good governance.
I think we'll leave it there.
What a great way to end.
Yes. Nice uplifting thing. All right, Lauren.
Same time next week.
We'll do it again next week.
All right, we'll see you then.